Here's a question for you. Should public prayer be allowed at town meetings? That debate unfolding right now before the United States Supreme Court. Supporters say opening prayers at public meetings has been part of our nation's fabric for centuries. Critics say it violates the First Amendment and looks like government endorsement of a specific religion. Bill Donohue, president of the Catholic League, Dave Muscato, public relations director of American Atheists, and Rabbi Spero, the president of Caucus for America and the author of Push Back. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming back.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, Rabbi, let me start with you on this. It's before the Supreme Court today. Somebody in a town somewhere in America felt offended that they were going to say a prayer before town meetings, and now we're going all the way to the top. You say what?
Oh, I think prayer is fine. It's part of our history here in America. It inspires people. It gives purpose and gravitas to situations. You know, when our founders talked about not establishing a religion, they had common sense and they understood something like prayer was not establishing a religion or forcing it upon others. In fact, Benjamin Franklin, and who can be a greater founder than Benjamin Franklin, he himself asked that the Congress of the United States or the Philadelphia Convention should start with a prayer. So there's not a problem here of forcing people or establishing a religion, as long as the person that does this prayer doesn't do it in a manner of evangelical. He doesn't want to evangelize people.
Right. Okay. So let me play devil's advocate with you. No pun intended, Bill. What about just having a moment of silence?
Well, that would be contrary to the country's founding, as Rabbi Spero said. You know, this case was resolved once already in 1983 in the Marsh versus Chambers case in Nebraska, and they said it's perfectly fine to do this. Now, why are we back with this? Why is the Obama administration, which is not exactly religion-friendly, on the right side of this issue?
Good point.
My argument is that I've written about this subject is that they're looking for the right test. They're looking for the least religion-friendly test in the Obama administration. That decision, Marsh, in the Supreme Court in 1983, which our side won the exact same issue. Since that time, you've had in 1984, Sandra Day O'Connor came out with another test, an endorsement test, and in 1992, Justice Kennedy came out with the coercion test. So what's really at stake here, I know we're going to win on this, and the question is, what actual standard of evidence are they going to use? And I don't know the answer to that,
well,
but that's what I keep my eye on.
I'm not so sure it's going to win quite necessarily. I mean, David, where do you come out on this? I know you're an atheist,
yes.
So you probably don't want to hear any kind of prayers anywhere.
Prayers actually don't bother me as long as they're not part of the meeting. If somebody wants to pray, they have a constitutionally protected right to free exercise of religion. I'm totally fine with that. The problem is when you bring it into the meeting. If you are on a city council, once that meeting starts, you're representing the city, and not everybody in this city wants to listen to that.
So it's my understanding that in this particular town, they used to do sort of a moment of silence, and then they recently changed it back to a prayer, and then that's what brought this whole case back forward.
They open up the Supreme Court that way, don't they? It's God shall save.
Yeah, and what they argue, the critics argue that in a town meeting it's different than on the federal stage.
But no one's required to go in there. There's no proselytization going on there. It's simply part of our nation's history. I mean, you can't take religion out of history. It's part of history.
A moment of silence doesn't inspire, it doesn't educate people. We're people who use words to communicate and inspire.
Well, I don't know. During my church service, we do a moment of silent prayer. So we kind of do it both ways.
Yeah,
among other prayers.
If you want to do that, I think that's fine.
Okay,
and actually,
I got to bring you on to this next topic because I know this is going to get a lot of people hot under the collar. Public school in Florida coming under fire this week as outraged parents stage a protest over a world history book. Now, here's what they're upset about. It apparently contains a chapter on Islam, but none on other religions. So, David, do you have a problem with this? The idea that now we're to the point where, I don't know, we're so PC in society that we're going to actually feature the Muslim religion but not talk about any other religions in a history book?
Well, actually, that specific book that you're talking about does have information on lots of other religions. It's just not in one single chapter. It's spread throughout.
It doesn't have a chapter on Christianity, and it doesn't have a chapter on Judaism.
It doesn't have a chapter on it. But I think, and you can quote me on this, I think that we should teach children about Christianity in public schools. We should.
Why?
Because they need to know that it's a big part of history. But we should also teach children about Islam and Hinduism and Scientology and atheism and everything else.
Well, here's what I think I was most personally offended by. This book supporters argue that students know about Christianity already, but need to learn more about Islam because of its crucial importance in international affairs. I don't have any problem with Islam, But Bill, what happens when we start taking Christianity and Judaism out of the textbooks?
Look, it's even worse than this, because Diane Ravitch did a book on this a number of years ago, talking about the language police and how they're elevating Islam and denigrating Christianity and Judaism. In 2008, Gibbert Sewell from the American Textbook Council did a major study of all the textbooks in this country. Again, they don't tell you the truth that Christianity was a reaction to the Crusades against Muslim violence. They make it sound like Christians started this. I didn't know the Muslims were so great with women and egalitarianism and the like. In other words, they're lying about Islam and they are denigrating Christianity.
But they say it's part of our culture, so we need to know more about it, Rabbi.
When you have a 32-page chapter, 32-page, where students probably stay on that chapter for maybe 2-3 weeks, and you have no chapter on Christianity or Judaism, then you know that the authors of these books, the people in the education environment, they're trying to indoctrinate or cause a suasion towards Islam. It's all part of the program that we've seen to diminish Christianity, our Judeo-Christian ethos. This is done by the multiculturalists.
Right.
And there's a second thing. The Saudis are funding. Somehow they are funding these books.
Well, I gotta wrap up there, but I know you guys will continue to discuss it in the green room. Thanks, gentlemen.